Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go. Welcome to today's episode of Leaders of the West. I'm really excited to be sitting down today with the president of Certified Angus Beef, John Stika. He leads a team dedicated to earning the trust of consumers around the world by consistently delivering the best beef experience possible. Through a vision focused on connecting people from pasture to plate, John and a passionate team work to grow demand for the branded beef product, Certified Angus Beef, and create the value of the registered Angus cattle, enhancing the lives and businesses of farming and ranching families and all who touch the brand along the way to the consumer. So today, one of the reasons that John is here with us is because as we have asked our followers, who are some of the best companies that you have ever worked for? Who are some of the best leaders that you have ever had the pleasure of serving with? John and the Certified Angus Beef name have been brought up multiple times by present employees and past employees, which says a lot about him and their company and its culture. So I'm excited to get to sit down today and have you guys get a little bit of insight as to why Certified Angus Beef has such a strong company culture and why John is such a well-respected leader. So thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been really looking forward to it. It's humbling to get the invite to participate. And I know the first couple episodes that you've posted have been outstanding. So I'm excited to be a part of what you got going on.
Well, thank you. So to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your experiences, and really what has led you to where you're at in your career?
Yeah, so if it goes back, I'm a kind of a farm kid from central Kansas is where I grew up, and just a diversified farm and livestock operation right there just north of Wichita, and have always had a passion for agriculture. And in particular, I found through FFA a passion for the meat industry in particular, that aspect of the business. And so, ultimately, I went to Kansas State University and got a bachelor's in animal science and a master's in meat science, and then went to the University of Kentucky to coach a livestock judging team while I was there and get a PhD in meat science as well. And then came directly to Certified Angus Beef, just based on really the reach out of a mentor that I had clear through college, who kind of helped identify that this might be an opportunity for me. And that was 25 years ago. And here I've been ever since with the same company, the same organization, serving the same cause to create value for Angus farming and ranching families. And so Ohio is where I live now with my wife, and we now have 3 adult boys that are off to beginning to start their own families. And so it's just been a very rewarding career and a very rewarding life.
So our audience comes from all over the agriculture and Western industries. They're not just ranchers. We have a lot of Western sports people, equine enthusiasts. So for those who may be less familiar with Certified Angus Beef, can you give us a brief overview of what the company does?
Yeah. So very quickly, we are the very first brand of beef that was ever commercialized in North America. We're owned by the farming and ranching families that raise Angus cattle. And our goal, our whole objective is to create value to add to their ability to sustain their farms and ranches across this country and to pass those on to the next generation, which I know is a passion of your own, Jesse, is to pass that ranch on. And we do that by focusing on creating demand with the people the farthest away from ranching country, by focusing on the consumer, both domestically and internationally. We promote and create demand for the Certified Angus Beef brand, which is a brand that has very specific specifications for quality, so that the consumer doesn't have to understand marbling or a lot of these different things about the science around what makes a great tasting steak. All they have to do is know that if it's not Certified Angus Beef, it's not the best. And they can look for the logo on a menu or in a retail case. And that's really what we're designed to do. And ultimately, though, the second thing that we're designed and created to do is to then create added value for those farming and ranching families that raise the cattle that ultimately supply that consumer demand. And so our job is to make buying beef easy and to return a reward back to those families that do the work to make sure that that product is there for consumers to enjoy.
Well, I can tell you, ironically enough, in the last month, our local grocery store, they have transitioned to where their meat case is certified Angus beef branded. And one of the things that I have been shocked by, just knowing the high standards that go into your brand, is the price hasn't necessarily changed, which I think is absolutely amazing, especially in a rural community where price is a huge factor, especially at the meat case.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. Sometimes if you don't have to raise the price, you can sell more of it, and go that route. And so I think oftentimes, depending on the cut, the best thing about the beef industry is we sell everything from ground beef to roasting items to filet mignon. And so there's a price point for everybody. And, our best retailers understand their market, they understand their consumer, and can still offer a high quality certified Angus beef product at a price point that fits the demographic in the community.
Okay, so let's go to the leadership side of things. I alluded a little bit as to why you are here. You are a very well-respected leader, not just in your company, but among your peers as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your leadership style?
Well, I'd say early on, it was probably trial and error. I probably couldn't stay out of my own way as a leader early on in my career, to be perfectly candid. And, ultimately by having mentors, by observing successful people around me, I would say what I've strived to do is to create and operate in a very servant leadership type approach. And I know that's been mentioned by some of your prior guests that you've had as well. And, it's a style that I try to be very intentional about engaging team members, engaging topics. Don't leave things to chance. Really engage people and try to get their feedback. One of the things that we try to do here is get 360 perspective on as many issues as we can around the office or decisions that we need to make. So that you get buy-in around the direction that the organization's going. So if I were to describe it, not always what I exercise, but what I try to strive to do is a very servant style leadership approach where you really focus on what your team needs, what your customers need, what the people you engage with need, and do what you can to deliver on that.
So let's dig into being somebody who's being intentional and having that very open line of communication, which was a specific thing that somebody mentioned about you, is that you are always approachable. You are always open to feedback. You are always have an open line of communication. Can you give us some specifics as to how you're able to do that?
It's being intentional. I mean, it just, for me, I would come back to, it is making sure that I get out of my office, get out from behind my desk and go talk to people. It really is about being the one to ask the first question, being the one to seek people out. And I think that's really, really hard to do sometimes. Everyone's busy. We all got things to do, but the reality, I have to remind myself too, the most important job I have is to go out and re-recruit every team member back to the brand every day, or as often as you can, to understand what's going on in their life, what's going on in their work environment, what are the struggles they have, what are the celebrations that they have, to be perfectly honest, and find ways to celebrate. And the feedback part is something that I've learned over time. The reality is I really like my own ideas, and that's a truth. And what I have found, it's been really, really good for me to try to be approachable to the point where folks are comfortable sharing their ideas, especially if they don't agree, or if they have something they want to add that they know can enhance the direction we want to go. And I think just creating that openness is something that's been very important. And again, it's intentional. It doesn't just happen. I think our team across the board tries to be very intentional about asking for feedback, because the reality is we all want to be in a position to provide input. And the more we can feed that need and desire that most people have, you just build a more cohesive team, and you work through struggles, I think, more effectively as well when people don't always agree, but everyone's had a chance to voice an opinion.
So you talk about feedback, which is along the same lines as constructive criticism. Can you give people tips for being open to constructive criticism? Because I know that that is something that is obviously hard for us to take, but it's very important if we want to continue to learn and innovate.
Yeah, I tell you, we like to talk about here. I still use constructive criticism, and I'm always reminded it's just feedback. It's not positive or negative. It's just feedback. We get to choose if it's critical or supportive. And I think it's all how we begin to try to create a culture that shapes feedback differently. For me, that feedback starts with one of the things that's really core to who we are as a brand and our culture. And that is, when you hire good people, we make the assumption that everyone has the best of intentions, that everybody wants to get to the same place, that everybody wants what's best for their team member, for the organization as a whole. And when you can make that assumption that everyone's intentions are pure for the benefit of the team, boy, it's easy to accept feedback with a much more positive perspective than feeling like somebody's just raking on you and, trying to be overly critical of your idea or something like that. From a personal experience, what I found when I started in this position, I was only here at Certified Angus Beef about 8 years before I was moved into this role. And what I found was, I clearly didn't have it all figured out. I just didn't know how much I didn't know at the time. And one of the most important people to me during that period of time, those first several years, was our director of people and culture. And the reason is she would provide me daily feedback on situations within the team or the office where I maybe left a great impression, but also more importantly, situations where maybe I said something or didn't reinforce a team member or a situation very well. She was very clear in communicating to me that I might want to circle back and maybe try to have a different interaction with that team or that person or that scenario. And I tell you, that's when I really began to learn how important feedback is. I didn't want to hear all that most often, but boy, if there's any level of success we've had in building culture here or in being a positive influence from my role, it's been because I had those early experiences in understanding how valuable that feedback can be. And I think the more experience you have in asking for feedback and receiving it, the reality is the more experience you get in not taking it critical or negative, but rather trying to always find the positive, especially when people's intentions are pure.
So let's talk about those earlier years. You've been at Certified Angus Beef since the late 90s. Obviously, CAB has evolved in a number of ways since then. But all in all, how has leadership in general evolved in the last 20 years?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it definitely has. I think leadership always evolves. I know when I first kind of entered the work world, the work environment was very corporate. I think it was still a situation, while there were exceptions in many instances, it really was a focus on there's your work life and then there's your life outside of work. And they were kept very separate for the most part. And you came to work, you did your job, and you were appreciated for doing your job. And you kind of did what you were told, and you went from there. I would say what we've seen as an evolution is that people want to be more engaged in why we do things. You've heard, I think it's Simon Sinek and others that do such a great job of talking about the why. People want to know your why for, why you're engaged in an organization or an activity. They're much less interested in what and how you do things. And I really think that that's been a great evolution in leadership. This servant style culture or style that I talked about, it's not new, but you sure hear about it a lot more today than ever. I think so many companies have figured out that today's, honestly, it's probably every generation. Maybe some of us older generation didn't realize we needed it too, but we all want to be valued. We all want to be appreciated. And I think leadership has changed in that standpoint that we know that if you give team members what they need and don't just tell them what to do, what the goals and the achievements that we can all meet long term are far outside of what we ever thought we could do under the old system or under a different system, more authoritative, directional kind of system. Engage people, get out of their way, and point them in the right direction and support them. and let creativity and innovation come to the surface. And I think our industry is full of examples that say that that's a good way to do business.
So on the team side of things, just to give people an idea of the size of CAB, about how many employees do you guys have?
Yeah, so we're 160 team members. Most of us are here in Worcester, Ohio, but we then would have a number of remote employees that would be anywhere from the Pacific Northwest to Florida, from the New England area into California, from the High Plains. We have team members in Mexico, Canada, the Middle East, Japan, Hong Kong, Korea. And so a team that's kind of a mix of remote and in the office, hybrid work environments today coming out of COVID, but a team that continues to grow and continues to try to engage each other as intentionally as we can.
Well, I think it goes to say that it's really easy for companies to say we have a great company culture when they only have 2 employees or 5 employees, right? If you're a solo entrepreneur, yeah, you have a great company culture. But when you have 160 some employees, that says a lot about what you guys do. So in your own words, how would you describe CAB's company culture?
Yeah, I would relational is the way I would say it. I think we're very high touch when it comes to connectivity. And, one of the things that, I think every culture has a cost. Okay. There's a cost benefit to even the company culture. We don't always move quick because we do have an approach that tries to engage as many people into direction setting decisions as possible. One, I think when it comes to making the right decisions, there's strength in numbers. And so sometimes more opinions get you a better perspective of what's the right thing to do, especially when you have a good mix of tenured team members and new team members that you can pull perspectives from. But sometimes it doesn't allow you to move real quickly, but it does allow us to, I think, make decisions that have a stronger likelihood of delivering the results that we want. And so that's a bit of what I would share there is we try to be high touch, relational. There are easier places to work. If you don't like people, this is probably not the place to be because we're very social. That's why being back in the office and having things like Zoom and Teams and so forth has been positive. At least we can see and we can engage, even though we have a mix of remote and hybrid type staff positions. But it's very relational, high touch, which always reminds me how important communication is. You never arrive. You just hopefully try to get better every day. And that's what I would say if I were to describe kind of our approach to culture is it's very relational.
Well, one of the things that you said is that you guys are very social, right? If you don't like people, that you probably shouldn't work there. But I think another thing that is very important when it comes to a strong company culture is communication. Because if you're not able to communicate with all of your employees effectively, people are going to feel left out. They're going to feel like they're not aware of what's going on, and that's going to kind of alienate them or silo them into their own departments. So on the communication side of things, what strategies do you guys use to ensure that everybody is kind of on the same page or knows what's going on?
Yeah, I think we've used them all. And then we circle back and you recycle them because, everything runs its course. We've got the standard meetings. We have meetings, okay? And meetings start out being usually very, very productive. And then unless you're really focused on making sure you got a good agenda each and every time, then the value of the meeting begins to go down. And we realize that and we circle back and try to strengthen meetings. But, we've gone back to electronic newsletters. We've gone back to one of the things I would say, Jesse, that's been foundational since day one from a communication standpoint is when the program was first started, I hear the stories around here from those that have been here for 36 years or more that the days back when it was right around Mick Colvin's kitchen table and it was just the 6 of us, that's kind of where communication started. And we still try to do that same kind of concept. Every other Wednesday, we have a full staff breakfast where for those that are in the office, we cook breakfast together. We interact over a meal. We have a segment of our business, give an update about what's going on. We try to generally communicate some of the bigger, broader touching topics that are going on across the organization. And it's just about being together. And I can't stress that enough, how important it is. Sometimes the content varies in value across the team, but it's just about being together and trying to prioritize that. And that's not easy to do as we've grown. And as we find ourselves traveling more and there's more people out of the office, but still making that a priority it kind of goes back. When my grandmother says you will be at Sunday evening dinner, my gosh, you will be at Sunday evening dinner. And it's because of the value I think that we've learned over the times that breaking bread together actually does. But beyond that, there's all the other things. We try to do as many meetings in person as we can, phone calls, emails, just connecting with people. We have 3 meetings a year where we bring all of our staff into Worcester for a full staff meeting and sales meeting. We plan evening activities that are socially oriented that allow us to not only bring our team together, but their families together. I think like a lot of other companies, our summer family fun day that we try to do to make sure that their families are a part of our family, so to speak, as well. So that's kind of a cross section of the things that we do. But again, it goes back to being very intentional about it. Culture doesn't build itself. You got to be very intentional about the culture you want.
No, it doesn't build itself. And you alluded to employees who have been there since the beginning. Has CAB's company culture always been this way, or is it more of a recent creation, if you will, that you guys have been focused on?
Yeah, no, I actually think it's always been that way. I look back at when I started, and I feel so fortunate that it has been this way since the beginning. That very open and very relational in its nature. When Nick Colvin and the team of people that were here at the very beginning, I think that's just the way it started. Maybe it wasn't intentional, but keeping those points of connection very much were during those early times. And I'm glad it was, because the reality is I like to believe I'm probably been cultured in this culture, so to speak, or kind of raised in this culture. I don't know if I think early in my career, I probably could have migrated towards any kind of culture one way or the other, very corporate, very authoritative, those kinds of things. But again, when you're surrounded by people that mentor you, you kind of are nurtured in a way of doing business that I feel very fortunate to be basically in this culture for 24 years. And I think it's our job to make sure that we continue to evolve the culture in a way that still keeps the core importance of being together and valuing one another and relational and service at the forefront, but making sure that we continue to evolve it to a way that's relevant to a next generation of team members coming in. But again, I think when you put people first, that's the crux of this culture. And it's been that way since the very beginning.
So to that next generation coming into not only CAB, but into any company or in any sector of the ag and Western industries, what advice would you give young leaders who are early on in their careers?
Yeah, I'd say find a mentor internally and externally. It can be official or it can be informal, whatever it is. I really think that find a mentor, and they can be, I think anyone you interact with can be a mentor. I had somebody here brand new. I was doing an employee orientation, and her comment to me was that mentoring should be, everyone should learn in a mentoring environment. And I think she's spot on. And I think that's one of the biggest things I would recommend. I think that the other thing is be present in your conversations, be present in your interactions with team members. And I would say even honestly, be vulnerable. And I mean that by be honest about your own strengths and your own weaknesses. The reality is the team probably already knows them, and admit it and own it. And don't make excuses for it if something's not your strength, but engage the team. And that's why we work in teams as opposed to individually, because we're so much better together, because we do have that ability to complement one another over the long haul.
Such strong words of wisdom. Thank you for those. So I'm going to ask you the final 4 questions that we ask all of our guests. The first is, what is the best piece of business or personal advice that you've ever been given?
Yeah, when you don't know what to do, go see somebody. Don't sit still. Go see somebody and talk to somebody. Dialogue creates solutions.
Oh man, I tell you what, I can take that to heart, because so often we aren't sure what to do and we get paralyzed in fear, and then we do nothing, and then we lose our momentum. And it is so crucial to continue to move forward.
Yep. And that is my advice for myself as I sit here and say that too. So, because I can get paralyzed sometimes.
If you could give people any words of wisdom and you knew that they would take them to heart, what would they be?
Yeah, a genuine focus on the needs of others is truly the most effective way to accomplish the goals that you have for yourself. And put priority on what other people need from you, and you'll be amazed how far you'll go.
I love that too, because so often I feel like we want to say, oh, I don't have time for that. Oh, I don't have time for that. Well, then when we need things, guess who isn't going to have time for us? But if you're giving, it's almost like you're making more time, because the time that you give to someone else is time that you are then going to get back for yourself.
Exactly. Agreed.
If you could go to dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be?
Yeah, I think aside from faith and family that would guide some of those decisions, I'm going to tell you Terry Francona, the general manager of the Cleveland Guardians baseball team. That's kind of top of mind for me right now. That guy, he just knows how to bring out the best in people. He knows how to communicate in a positive way. He knows how to rally his players and get the most out of an entire team of professionals. And because it's baseball season, I'm going to say Terry Francona.
Okay, well, little known fact that I didn't know, and maybe you guys didn't know, John is a baseball fan.
Hey!
Okay, the final question. What is one quote that you lead your life by?
Yeah, this is actually, I can't tell you who originated with, but it was shared with me by a customer. And that is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Ooh, well, that is the perfect way to round out this episode of Leaders of the West. John, thank you so much for being such a wealth of knowledge and being so willing to share that with everybody.
Oh, the pleasure was mine. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, hey, guys, do us a favor. If there is something that resonated with you today, which I am sure there was, take a screenshot of it, post it on social media, make sure to tag Of the West, tag Certified Angus Beef. We want to hear all of your thoughts and well wishes. And if you haven't already, make sure that you are going to follow or subscribe so that you never miss an episode. We will see you guys next week. If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.